Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. In 2016, Gerard Craft should have been on top of the world. He'd won the coveted James Beard Award for Best Chef Midwest for his restaurant niche. He operated a successful restaurant group. His eateries included Pastaria, Taste Bar, and Brasserie, all of them popular with diners and restaurant critics both. But Craft was secretly dealing with intense anxiety. In an essay published Monday on the website Plate, he said he decided to close Niche in part because he was worried it could only fall in the rankings. In my town, there is a top 100 list, and Niche was listed as the #1 restaurant. But then every year I would panic that Niche would be knocked off the top spot. That fear was ultimately one of the major factors that went into the decision to close the restaurant in 2016. I thought that if we went out on top, we couldn't be knocked down. Those are the words of Gerard Craft. And joining us in studio to talk about his battles with anxiety and the way rankings and awards wreaked havoc on his well-being is Chef Gerard Craft. Gerard, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote this essay for Plate magazine.
Yep.
What made you decide to do that?
Well, so this is my second blog post for Plate magazine. The first was about kind of company culture and how we went down that road with our company and shifting that. And so they said they wanted to do some more stuff, and we were starting to kind of talk about topics. And it was a late night phone call with a very close friend of mine, another chef, who was battling a similar situation. And I was up talking to him for a while, and just the pain that I know that's out there in a lot of these chefs. This wasn't the first time I'm having that conversation with a friend and saying, look, I've been there, and, publicly, for years, nobody's really been allowed to talk about it. If you, especially when you're, perceived as so successful, I think it's really easy for people to say, oh, you're just whining, or, something
I
of
wish
that
I had
nature.
his problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like boohoo. But it's something that I know that other people struggle about. So I just wanted to kind of write about my account of it to tell other people out there, that they're not alone. And it's really been amazing to see the response.
I was going to say, your post went viral.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the private responses just from chefs around the country that could really just deeply relate to it was great. I don't know if it's great or just super alarming, but I do think it was great that everybody starts to understand that you're not alone.
You called it a blog post, but this to me felt like a really well-reasoned essay. I mean, you must have put some work into. Did it all just come out in one draft?
Well, I mean, there was 2 or 3 drafts for sure, but I mean, the base of it really just all. I mean, this is stuff that I think about far too often, and that I've personally just gone through for, Niche's was open for 11 something years, but that was 15 years ago. And so, I mean, this is my life and my friends' lives. And
do you think that perfectionism is something that goes hand in hand with being a chef?
I do, and I don't think it's. And I think the thing about this article is it isn't just chefs, right? It's anybody who kind of cares deeply about their work and that has a competitive spirit and holds themselves maybe to higher standards than other people even hold you to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that I think makes a lot of people successful in the first place. So I think that's important.
What drives you could also kill you.
Yeah, totally. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And I think you see it in acting. You see it with musicians a lot. And all of those industries, you see people really struggling privately with, depression and anxiety and, what's next and things of that nature. So.
This is what you wrote about the years where you were a finalist for the Beard, but you didn't actually win. You wrote, and it's crazy because you're not a loser. You're clearly being compared to winners, but that kind of rational thinking gets lost somewhere along the way and ego takes over. The years I lost, I felt like I'd let everyone down. When I was taken off the list, I started to wonder if my staff, my wife, and my kids thought I was the complete failure that I felt like. That made me so sad to read that.
Yeah, I know. It's, I mean, but it's crazy. And I think a lot of people can can relate to that too, just feeling like this is how people are perceiving me. And even if they're not, they're super excited and
like you kind of have the self-awareness of knowing that you're not a loser, but at the same time, it sounds like there's this voice in your head that you could not silence.
Yeah. And when I got knocked off that one year, I think that was just, it was such a big blow to me. And, so, I recognize that as ego and, maybe not in the traditional sense of, being in quote unquote, egotistical person or something, but just that you've been hurt and you feel less about yourself. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. It's just your ego and, how you feel about yourself.
You mentioned the case of this French chef who he lost one of his Michelin stars and he ended up taking his own life. And you said you could understand that feeling. I mean, that seems like a really dark depression. How were you able to come out of that?
And it is a really, dark place. And I think that I think a lot of people, and I have heard from people through this post being out that have Michelin stars that can really, like, they just can't fathom losing them. And, I think it's so embarrassing and so you feel so much shame with this stuff but it's crazy, right? Because if you become a 2 Michelin star chef, for those that don't know out there, like, Michelin star ranking goes 1 to 3, and even getting 1
is huge.
It's a really big deal. And, getting 2 is like monumental. Like 2-star restaurants are, tops in the world. And then 3 is just like, I don't know the actual stats, how many there are out there, but there aren't a lot. So going from 3 to 2,
which, like this chef who killed himself,
and he didn't actually ever get dropped, but the newspapers were speculating that he was going to get dropped. And I think it is important to note that, and I tried to really, headlines and stuff like that, they take these in different directions. That obviously it's not the award's fault, right? Like, it's not the Michelin Guide's fault. It's not the top 100's fault. It's not, my intent in this was to more say, like, look, we really got to focus on each other, and we got to focus on how we perceive ourselves during these times, right?
So is that the answer, that chefs need to find a way to help each other through this, or that we need to look into ourselves?
I think we need to look into ourselves, and I think that's the biggest thing. And, I see a therapist, a psychiatrist, and
is that something new? Were you
helpful.
Doing that back when you were talking about these really dark places
I started kind of getting into that after that.
Yeah. And so you say that's been a big help for you.
It's been a huge help for me.
What part of it do you think has been the big help?
A combination of things, from medication, to learning skills to just kind of perceive what is, your own negative thinking versus what is reality, which I think is very important, because I think there are times when your anxiety is created by things that you really need to tackle, and like, something going on in the restaurants or whatever, and it's like you really need to dive in and,
your subconscious is nagging you for a reason.
Yeah, and that's very helpful, and to know that that's real versus your negative thinking of, I'm a loser and, people are laughing at you, or, whatever it is that your head tells you. I mean, it's amazing how powerful our minds are. I mean, that's why you look at a guy like Anthony Bourdain and you say, how could Anthony Bourdain kill himself? Anthony Bourdain was on top of the world. He was beloved by so many. He did so many great things. Had a daughter. Like, how?
Yeah, how could he do that?
To that place, and depression's a very real thing, and your own negative thinking is so powerful that it's really, it's hard not to listen to it. So.
And as you say, therapy can really help with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a minute about the media. St. Louis has, for a mid-sized town like we are, we have a ton of food publications. I mean, we have 2 full-time food publications, and we've got a very robust daily food section. And, there's other magazines as well that are covering these scenes. It seems like a big part of what you were reacting to wasn't just the awards, but also the way that the media was covering them. Do you think that there's ways that the local media has covered things that hasn't been fair?
No, I think the problem, and I think if you read back, like the main thing that was really kind of pointing a lot of that stuff out was where you're already depressed.
Right.
And, you see a big headline, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but, Craft misses again, or, something like that, obviously it's not unfair, you're just, it's not exactly what you needed at that
it exacerbates
to read
what you're
when
already...
you got on Twitter that day or whatever. You want to crawl into a hole and hide somewhere,
You mentioned this, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, how they had sent a photographer to the kitchen to photograph you when they made the announcement for Best Chef Midwest. And unfortunately, they didn't do that in the year you won. They did that in a year that you didn't win. And you said they proceeded to use that picture for every story they would run about me in the future. And you described the look on your face as saying it was definitely a look of defeat. Now, I went back and found that photo, and I was looking at it, and to me, it doesn't look like defeat.
Really?
It looks like you're thoughtful.
Staring at my phone, just like...
Yeah, to me, it looked like you were deep in thought.
It's...
But so maybe that goes back to the perception when it's inside your own head.
Totally.
They obviously weren't doing that to mess with you.
No, not at all. And I didn't mean that by any means. It was more just like you're just seeing it over and over, and you're just like, God, that was such a crappy moment. Like, why do I have to keep reliving this?
So in 2015, you actually did win the James Beard Award. Were you able to enjoy that victory, or was your anxiety right back where it was?
It was funny because I was actually talking with one chef, and I said, the sad thing is when I won the James Beard Award, I wasn't excited. I didn't go out to a party. I was just relieved it was over.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know, right? It's I just wanted it to be done, and I didn't want to be waiting for that call anymore, and so
you've got, since that time, since you closed Niche, you opened Sardella, you opened Cinder House, you've had some more big successes. Now that you're in this different headspace, have you been able to enjoy those successes?
I think I'm really bad at enjoying success.
You clearly are.
I really am. I always have been. I don't like compliments. I focus heavily on negative. It's something I try not to do, but it's I think part of being a restaurateur is always just looking for what's wrong.
It's that perfectionism.
And I am able to. I think what I am able to do now is I am able to make it a little bit less personal.
So that's some progress.
Yeah, that is progress. And I don't take as much to heart anymore.
And with this story, you've obviously gotten this huge response where people are saying this has really helped them. Are you at least able to enjoy the success of that?
Enjoying it would probably be the wrong word. I'm enjoying the conversation that it started. And, you talked about the media's place. And, I think one chef who was talking to me was saying, one of the hardest parts was that there's so much push right now in every direction. So, if you are a chef that's killing it, and the media is all over you and you're the golden child, and then, if you're driving your team and say you're, kind of a really tough chef, then, you're kind of being labeled as, I don't know, like a bully boss, or and then if you like take off the gas and you're not pushing as hard, then the media is coming at you because you're not pushing hard enough, and
you can't win.
You're a has-been, and so that chef was talking just about like how hard it is, and these are all the same media people sometimes that are talking to them about balance and work life and all these things and wages, but now it's too expensive, and it's, I think for chefs these days, we're in a place that it's harder than ever to juggle everything that's being thrown our way. And so I think, just opening the conversation, that's life, right? It's not anybody's fault. That's, it's the journalist's job and the chef's job. And I think it's just something that we have to talk openly about and have dialogue. And I don't know, hopefully that leads to something.
That's Chef Gerard Craft, whose essay in Plate magazine has been generating a whole lot of buzz and starting some really important conversations. Gerard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on The Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.